Imagine 4 different prime ministers in a single year, each one murdered, forced out, or dead by their own hand. The country tearing itself apart in civil war after civil war, armies declaring their own candidates. The capital city under siege, 50,000 people dead in street fighting. Sound like absolute madness. Well, that's exactly what happened to Rome in the year 69 AD, and it's one of the most bonkers periods in ancient history. 4 emperors, 12 months, rivers of blood. This is the story of the year of the 4 emperors, and it's got everything. Betrayal, revenge, suicide, and enough political backstabbing to make modern politics look tame by comparison. Let's set the scene. It's 68 AD, and Emperor Nero has just died. For much of Rome, this is cause for celebration. Another tyrant has bitten the dust. Good riddance. But here's the problem. Rome needs a new emperor, and this time choosing one isn't going to be straightforward. In fact, it's going to trigger one of the most chaotic years in Roman history. A year so violent and turbulent that it nearly tears the empire apart at the seams. With rebellion spreading and Nero's days clearly numbered, the Senate starts looking for a replacement. They settle on Servius Sulpicius Galba, the governor of Hispania. Now Galba's got an impressive CV. He's a well-rounded politician and military man, known for his sternness and loyalty. He even styles himself as general of the Senate and people of Rome rather than the typical general of Caesar, which is a nice bit of defiance against Nero's regime. The Senate declares him emperor whilst he's still in Spain. Job done right. New emperor sorted. Everyone can relax. Not Git. There's another bloke called Nymphidius Sabinus, who reckons he should be emperor instead. The Praetorian Guard, that's Rome's elite imperial bodyguard, basically takes care of this pretender by assassinating him. Problem solved. Galba begins his journey to Rome, survives an ambush from one of Nero's still loyal legions, and eventually makes it to the capital to accept his new position. The Senate's pleased. The guard's on board. Everything's looking good, except it isn't. Because Galba, it turns out, is an absolute disaster as emperor. The man has a reputation for harsh discipline and a rather tyrannical streak. You know, exactly the sort of personality traits the Roman people are completely sick of after years of Nero's madness. In a short window, he has to make a good first impression. He completely bottles it. He disbands the German guard. He seizes properties from innocent Romans. He fails to pay the Praetorians properly. Never a good idea when your life depends on these blokes protecting you. He hands out death sentences without bothering with trials. He basically treats the empire like his personal plaything. His advisors are rubbish, contributing to a string of terrible decisions. But honestly, Galba himself is just unlikable. He's cruel, he's unfair, and he's exactly the opposite of what Rome needs after Nero. Unsurprisingly, people start getting fed up. The legions stationed in Upper Germany are the first to openly rebel against the new emperor. The next day, the legions in Lower Germany follow suit, and they go one step further. They declare their own governor, Aulus Vitellius, as the true emperor instead. This is January 69 AD, just 7 months into Galba's reign. It's already clear that the Senate's chosen emperor has been a spectacularly poor choice. On the 15th of January, the Praetorian Guard does what the Praetorian Guard does best when an emperor becomes inconvenient. They assassinate him, just like they did to his earlier challenger. They put an end to Galba. But here's the thing. It wasn't just the Praetorians who wanted him dead. Even former allies had turned against him. One such man was Marcus Salvius Otho. Now Otho's story is actually rather tragic. At the start of Galba's rebellion against Nero, Otho had taken the newcomer's side. Why? Because there was absolutely no way he was going to support Nero. See? Nero had stolen Otho's wife. Her name was Poppaea Sabina, and she was the notorious mistress of the emperor. She'd been married to Otho until Nero became so obsessed with her that he forced them to divorce. Nero then married Poppaea himself and sent Otho into exile in Lusitania. Nero did make the humiliated husband governor of the province, but Otho would never, ever forgive him. This meant that Galba had only secured Otho as an ally because of their mutual hatred of Nero. Once Nero was gone, that bond meant nothing. So when Galba proved to be just as awful as Nero in different ways, Otho's loyalty evaporated. After Galba's death, Rome chose Otho to take his place. There's great anxiety about what this decision will bring. Will it be another tyrant? Another disaster. But here's the twist. Otho seems to have no intention of subjecting Rome to another dictatorship. He appears genuinely concerned about the welfare of the empire. Unfortunately, this becomes irrelevant very quickly because Otho isn't the only man who thinks he should be emperor. Remember those German legions who turned against Galba? They've already declared Aulus Vitellius, the former consul and commander of the Germania Inferior army, as their emperor, dangerously unaware of just how far the revolt has spread along the Rhine. Otho completely misses the news that even more legions from Britain, Gaul, and Rhaetia have joined as challenger. Vitellius and his massive army are now marching on Rome. When they arrive, they find themselves facing defenders loyal not to Galba, but to Otho. This serves as absolutely no deterrent. Vitellius is ready for war, and here's where something completely unexpected happens. Something that actually earns Otho enormous respect, even if it comes too late. In a drastic turn of events, Otho responds by taking his own life. He's reported to have said, "It is far more just to perish one for all than many for one." Think about that for a moment, realizing the very real possibility of a full-blown civil war. Otho chooses to end his own life, to spare the lives of everyone who would fight for him. Rome has already been exhausted by civil wars. The emperor simply can't bring himself to cause another one. In death, Otho earns massive respect and adoration. But it's in death. Once again, the role of emperor has changed hands. Otho reigned for just 3 months. Now it's Vitellius's turn. And if you thought things might settle down now, you'd be very, very wrong. All accounts of Vitellius's reign can be questioned as to their fairness, but nobody really regards him as a beloved ruler. He expands the Praetorian Guard with his own men. He opens up imperial administration offices to the equestrian class. He bans astrologers from Rome, which, fair enough, I suppose. Heves. Further honors to the deceased Nero, which is a bit odd considering Nero's unpopular, and he's alleged to have starved his own mother to death, which, if true, is horrific even by Roman standards. Vitellius isn't quite at the despotic extreme of some of his predecessors, but he's not exceptionally liked either. And in Rome, being neither loved nor hated is still dangerous. The lack of unanimous approval displays a hazardous level of disapproval, so it comes as rather predictable when, in the summer of 69 AD, Vitellius is informed that history is repeating itself. Again, another emperor has been declared elsewhere within the empire. This time, it's the eastern provinces of Rome. Along with Illyricum and Dalmatia, that split from the Senate's choice of ruler. They declare in favor of a man named Titus Flavius Vespasianus, or Vespasianus, as he's more commonly known. He's a politician and general who served in the invasion of Britain, and now he's got the backing of the legions in the east. For the second time, Vitellius faces the prospect of civil war. Unlike his predecessor, Otho, Vitellius is willing to plunge Rome into that chaos. The emperor's immediate reaction is to gather several legions and send them east to prevent Vespasian's forces from crossing into Italy. This leads to a decisive defeat of Vitellius's troops. The emperor's defense rapidly desertions, low morale, and outright betrayal are systematically eating away at what remains of his army. The steady disintegration of his forces pushes Vitellius to make a humbling decision. Abdication is his only answer. Oddly enough, the Praetorian Guard disagrees, despite Vitellius having already reached an agreement with his opponent about the exchange of power. The Praetorians halt him on his way to officially make the transfer. Forced back to his palace, the emperor is given no choice but to renew his fight against Vespasian, with only a meager civilian militia on his side. Vitellius puts up his final fight as Vespasian's men reach the walls of Rome. The battle is horrific. According to the writings of Cassius Dio, 50,000 people are brutally killed by the end of the fighting. 50,000. Let that number sink in for a moment. Both sides take massive casualties, particularly the invaders. And in the end, all this bloodshed is for nothing more than the power-hungry goals of yet another would-be ruler. Vitellius is dragged through the streets of Rome before being violently murdered. His final words to the winning side: "Yet I was once your emperor." Meanwhile, as this brutal civil war tears through Italy on its path straight to the capital, Vespasian himself is far away in Egypt. He's been declared emperor there as well, and on the 21st of December, 69, the Senate finally agrees. Vespasian is now emperor, the fourth emperor in a single year. Think about what Rome has just been through. In the space of 12 months, the empire has seen 4 different emperors. Galba, assassinated after 7 months of tyrannical rule. Otho, who took his own life after 3 months to prevent further bloodshed. Vitellius, murdered after about 8 months of increasingly desperate rule. And finally, Vespasian, who actually managed to hold on to power and found a new dynasty. But the cost of getting to this point has been astronomical. Civil wars have ravaged the empire. Armies have fought each other across Italy. 50,000 people died in the final battle for Rome alone. Countless more perished in the various campaigns and skirmishes throughout the year. The year of the 4 emperors exposed a fundamental weakness in the Roman system. When there's no clear mechanism for succession, when the Praetorian Guard can make or break emperors at will, when provincial armies can simply declare their own candidates and march on Rome, the entire empire becomes unstable. It's a recipe for disaster, and 69 AD is what happens when all these factors collide at once. What's remarkable is that Rome survived this chaos at all. Many empires would have collapsed entirely under this kind of strain. But Rome was resilient, and Vespasian would prove to be exactly the steady hand the empire needed after a year of madness. He'd restore stability, rebuild the administration, and establish a dynasty that would rule for the next several decades. But none of that erases the fact that Rome came terrifyingly close to tearing itself apart in 69 AD. So there you have it. 1 year. 4 emperors. Multiple civil wars. Enough political backstabbing, military conflict, and sheer chaos to fill a dozen TV dramas. The year of the 4 emperors stands as one of the most turbulent periods in ancient history. A stark reminder of what happens when ambition, military power, and political instability collide. If this journey through Rome's bloodiest year fascinated you, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories from history that prove reality is often more dramatic than any fiction. Drop a comment and tell me, which of these 4 emperors do you think had the most legitimate claim to the throne? Was Otho's suicide noble or futile? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, remember that power without stability is just organized chaos. And Rome, in 69 AD, was the perfect storm of both.